Now, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Joining me on the phone, as always, it is Alan Niven. Bonjour, monsieur.
Bonjour, monsieur. Comment ça va?
Well, though I seem to be out of breath for some reason, but we have got the one and only Jon Anderson with us. We've had Jon on many times before, and always a pleasure to talk to him. Were you a Yes guy, by the way, going back to the old days? Because when you think of Jimi Hendrix and you think of the bands you worked with, Great White and Guns N' Roses, there's a lot of blues rock, there's a lot of rock, there's a lot of even metal in there. I don't hear anything very progressive. Were you a progressive guy?
Kind of yes and no. The terminology progressive, to my memory, got formulated and post-applied to some records that journalists wanted to find a little genre title for. You know, so for example, in the Court of the Crimson King, like King Crimson, and there's your mouthful for the day, wasn't necessarily quote unquote a progressive record when it was released, but it was deemed to be so later. And similarly with bands like Yes and Colosseum, when they first put their records out, they were just bands who were doing something different and something interesting. And in terms of being a Yes man, I've never been a Yes man in my life, but I did enjoy going to go and see Yes, and I owned a couple of their records. And to give you an idea of how much I wanted to see Yes, back in those days, if you didn't have any money, there was a way of tightrope walking on 3 walls that got you to the bathroom window of the Oxford Town Hall. And if you sent somebody in with a ticket, they'd open up that bathroom window, and then you'd tightrope walk across these walls about 30 feet up, and then dive through the window and get in to see the band. And my first Yes concert was through the bathroom window. But
by the way,
with Jon Anderson,
yeah,
I've probably mentioned it before, but there's an absolute hidden gem out there that was released, I think, in something like 91 or 92, where he made a record with a Japanese artist called Kitaro, and it's called Dream. And if you like Jon's voice, and if you're into Yes music at all, you will love this record.
Yeah, we've mentioned that before, and I've had a chance to check it out. It is a great record here, but we're recording this on January 4th, so I want to, and normally we don't mention dates, but I'm going to mention it because it's very specific. But and this is probably going to make everybody feel old, but on January 4th, 1972, so 49 years ago now, actually, we're 2021. Prog rock innovators, Yes, released single Roundabout. So there you go. Were you around when it was a fresh, hot single? And do you like Roundabout?
Oh, absolutely. I had the album it was on. And my favorite Yes album was the one with the green cover. That was the one that I played the most. But did you ever tightrope walk across walls 30 foot up to get into a show for free?
No. What I do is I send an email,
and they send you a limo,
and they send you a ticket link, and no. And here's another one, since we're doing January 4th trivia. But 5 years ago today, on January 4th, so 2016. Do you know what happened? Because it relates kind of to you, indirectly.
Hold on a second. 4th or 5th, and I don't remember exactly which, God forgive me, but I think it's also Doc Neeson's birthday, so I'd like to say happy birthday, Doc. I still love you, even though you're gone from us.
Yes, well, in fact, January 4th, 1986 is when Phil Lynott passed away, so we're doing all the January 4th stuff, and we of course love Phil, and you know, always condolences to his family that he passed away, but January 4th...
I once went to a party with Phil in it, and it was in the Fulham part of London, and the party came to a very abrupt and brief halt when somebody picked up, we used to have these big old metal dustbins, we used to call them, garbage cans called here, but in England we call them dustbins. And somebody took exception to the fact that the band were playing loudly in this storefront, which had been painted over with some rock and roll imagery, and they threw the dustbin through the window. And I have a memory of seeing Phil Lynott scarpering at top speed down the street, and he went one way, and I went, well, I think I'm going the other.
Oh, so you got to hang out with Phil, but I'm going to get to my 5 years anniversary because there's still no new music. But this is the day that Guns N' Roses in 2016 updated all their social media and web presence with a picture of the logo and Coachella. And they didn't say anything, but everybody knew what that meant. And here we are on the 5th anniversary today, and still no new music.
Yeah, and there was that odd piece of paper that was put in front of us a while ago. I still think that's genuine, and I still think they're sitting on new music, and I still think that at some point it'll pop, and I hope it's good.
But 5 years after the reunion tour announcement, and we're still staring at, live dates. It's like, all right, in this Lifetime tour, 5 years later, bravo. Can we, change the name of the tour and release something? Even release the Coachella set as a live, anyway, we're way off topic with Jon Anderson. So let us get over to Jon. He's got a new product, new stuff, new everything. Here is the one, the only, the owner of a lonely heart, Jon Anderson. We are speaking with Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Jon Anderson. He is re-releasing Song of 7. And as we say here in Montreal, le bonjour, Jon. How are you?
Very good. Bonjour to you too.
Yes, and I've asked you this before, and I'll get over to Song of 7 in a second here, but when it comes to the career, your career and the career of Yes, Quebec and sort of this eastern part of Canada was very, very important to you, was it not?
I think so. There was always that energy of coming to Quebec province and realizing that everybody likes the band. This is cool. We traveled the world and as a band, and the energy we got. I remember one time playing in Montreal and a big arena there, and they were still cheering half an hour later after we finished. So we went back on and did, I think we did I'm Down, a Beatles song.
That's a great song to cover. So let's get into Song of 7. It came out in November of 1980. We are speaking here at the beginning of December 2020. 40-year anniversary. Just talk to me about that in terms of, as a musician, as a creator, as somebody who has this creative energy. How is it to look back at something you were doing 40 years ago? Is it like sort of me looking at a high school picture, looking and going, "Oh, look at that hair," or do you look back at it and go, "Man, I was in a zone"?
Well, I honestly, the last 10 years has gone by so fast that when you look back 40 years, it's hard to believe, really. So when I think about Song of 7, I was in that sort of space where I really felt great with what Yes had done over that 10-year period, finishing with the album. I think it was, we made it in Montreux, in Switzerland, and it was, what was it called? It had Awaken on it. So I felt really good that musically we'd actually done something really important, musically speaking, for that 10-year period. And to be able to do a solo album was just normal. Record company said, "Do you want to do another solo album?" And I said, "Yeah, I can do that." So they gave me money to get on with it. And those days have gone totally. But 40 years ago, it was like a gift to go into a studio and just write songs, and lo and behold, I started doing little bits of composition here, and then the opposite, doing very simple songs. And I was able to get some very talented people, like friends that I knew, new friends that they knew. And all of a sudden, I've got people coming into the studio in my house in London every other day, and it all turned out to be a really just an enjoyable experience to make Song of Seven.
It really did. So I'm going to focus on the album a bit more in a second here, but at the same time, at the beginning of that year, you put out the album Short Stories with Vangelis. Talk to me about that in terms of having this creative energy to do 2 albums a year. And what was that like for you in terms of making that album and then getting on the road and then getting over to your own solo album? How did you see your career at that time? Because you were taking a break from Yes, or you were out from Yes. Were you trying to forge a new band with Vangelis? Were you trying to forge a solo career? Were you trying to do both? Where were you in terms of career at that time?
Probably everything you just said. I think Vangelis really changed my perception of music because he was a very spontaneous creator in his studio. And I just went into his studio. We became friends. I tried to get him into Yes, but that didn't work out. So I'd go in his studio listening to him composing for films. And then one day I walked in and he was playing some music. And I looked over, I said, "Is the microphone working?" He said, "Oh, yes, sing, sing." So I started singing, and we wrote 3 songs in a row, which became the basis of the first album together. And what I realized was that there was this spontaneity within him that I would get with Steve Howe, but then I had to develop it through the information I would get from the band as they performed the songs. I'd start thinking of ideas and so on. But with Vangelis, we actually, and it's hard to explain, but every song we ever did was the first take. And we would do like a 2-minute piece and then a 3-minute idea, then a 1-minute idea. And then Vangelis would say, "Okay, I'll edit them together and you figure out what you were singing about." So I'd go into the corner with my headphones and he'd do some edits and add some beautiful sounds, and I'd figure out what I was trying to sing about and then walk in and sing it. So within the space of a couple of hours, we'd done a piece of music. And that's what we always did. It had to be a first take because it's like chance music in a way. So I had a very good energy about doing any kind of album after that because I felt that I was really learning a definite way of expressing myself musically and not worrying too much about, basically what the song was going to become. You just do it. And that's one of the great things about Vangelis. And as it happens, when we got into other albums like Friends of Mr. Cairo, which did very well in Canada, one of the big selling records there, but we couldn't sell anything in America for some reason because I think the Vangelis' manager had a big argument with the record company executive, and then he said forget that album. We're not going to sell that. And it sold so many in Canada. I'm so blessed that at least Canadians welcomed the music I was doing with Vangelis. And I just loved that I was spreading my wings in a sort of way, musically speaking and emotionally. I'd go on tour as a solo artist with a band and do animation. That kind of thing, it just opens up. You never think that you're going to last another 4 or 5 years. You never think about that. And here we are 40 years later. It's kind of amazing.
It is. Okay, so let me ask you about this because Vangelis always talked about spontaneity of music and being spontaneous, and I think you were even going to call the album Spont at some point to go with that. But how is that process for you compared to, for example, Oleus of Sunhillow, where you were trying to get all the horns and the this and the that? And do you prefer just to walk in and be spontaneous, or do you prefer to sit there and have all this production and think about the bells and the whistles and where the sound's going to go? What is sort of your favorite way of doing it?
Everything. Every time I create music, I was just singing a song before you rang that I wrote yesterday with a friend of mine who lives in Orlando. He sent me a beautiful guitar work, and I just sang this sort of idea, and then I decided to re-sing exactly the same sounds that I was trying to make, and I call it Opionian for some reason. And what was inspiring for me was this constant door opening over the beginning of around the 1980, around that period of time when the 80s was coming. The doors were opening, and I was learning so much about music that I would try anything. And with Vangelis, you never know what's going to come out of his keyboards. He's just a master of the mystical, magical world of music.
Oh, he absolutely is. In fact, talk to me also a little bit about your musical vision, because over the years, we go back to, I guess, the late 60s, early 70s. We've gone from progressive music. We've done more, not Arab sounding music, but more, you know what I'm trying to say, more Middle Eastern kind of stuff. You've had pop stuff. We've had the MTV hits. Is there a style that you prefer, or do you prefer to be the guy that will just do what's in his head, and that's my musical statement for this time?
It's exactly what you say. It's like I have a feeling that I'm working on something very special all the time. I've been working on this project now for 6 months since we went into quarantine, which I recorded just before I toured 1,000 Hands last year. And you can actually go to YouTube, I think. There's Jon Anderson, Joyfulness, Thankfulness, Gratefulness, Hopefulness. And the 4 pieces of music. Now, when I got home from touring, I started driving around doing errands with my car, and I had the music in the car, and I was listening to it and thinking, wow, this is kind of interesting music. Maybe I should sing on it. And that's what I've been doing. I've been actually singing on this music that I recorded in 1 week in September of last year. And it's as though my whole world has been taken over by this totally different perception of music as well. And it's a very exciting time because on the one hand, I released the 1,000 Hands album this year, and then I released a song that I wrote 12 years ago called Screw You. So I really feel like I'm running the gamut musically now.
You really are. And speaking of running the musical gamut, since we are talking sort of anniversaries, I just want to take you back to one that has a 50th anniversary, which is, of course, Time and a Word by Yes. And there's jazz, pop, folk. There's all kinds of stuff going on in there. How important was that sophomore album for what that band was doing and what you were doing in terms of pushing boundaries? Because we come out of the years of Elvis and the Beatles, and we have these 3-minute pop songs going all over radio, and then Yes comes around, and Time and a Word comes around, and you go, oh, okay, this is new, this is intriguing. Talk to me about the 50th anniversary of Time and a Word for a second.
Well, it was a very, very important moment because we done the first Yes album, and the reaction was okay. We were touring a lot, and we were told by the record company, you need to make another album. So we got together, and I'd written some songs. One of them was Time and Word. And all I could think about was like with orchestra. It'd be really do something different. It just can't be a band playing the songs. Why don't we just work with an orchestra, which we actually did. And I was listening to one of the songs was the Richie Havens song, No Experience Necessary, which is a really special song because we've been on tour with Richie Havens, and the production of that on that record is pretty good. And then we did a song by Buffalo Springfield, Look at the Sad Goodbyes, Everything's a Wasting Time sort of thing. But the orchestration is really magical. So in a way, I felt we were moving forward musically. The record didn't do that well, but it pushed us along getting ready for the Yes album. So we had to go through this period of not really knowing who we were musically. So quick, get an orchestra in, make it sound better, And then we found ourselves we went on tour after we finished it, and then I said to the guys, why don't we all live in a farmhouse way, way down in Cornwall, Devon or something like that, and get away from London because I don't think it's doing us any good, musically speaking, And that's when we went and wrote these songs for the Yes album, the third album. And that inspired us to move on. So you have to go through these experiences of, like we did with the orchestra, that didn't quite work in my mind, in my consciousness. But every now and again, I'll hear a track from that album and think, hey, that was pretty good.
Well, listen, it was pretty good because here we are 50 years later still talking about the music that you created and you and the guys created. And, well, I mean, what other compliment can you get? I mean, people liked it, right? You win.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, right?
It's like a dream in a way. You get into this place where, as I said, I've been working on all this music this past 6 months now or so. And gosh, I must have about four or five albums that need to be released in the next 2 or 3 years of music and musical ideas. And it's a question now of, I think I've got another 4 months of being at home, which me and my wife are really enjoying a lot. And just getting on with work and feeling that the next 3 or 4 months will actually bring a picture up of all the projects that I want to get finished for the next 10 years, if you like.
All right. I'm going to take what you just said, and I'm going to ask you, which is clearly a dumb question, but I'm going to ask you the dumb question. Why not put the pen down and just say, hey, I've done 50 years of this. I'm just going to go out when I tour and play and play Owner of a Lonely Heart. I'm just going to give you the hits.
Oh, no.
Why?
No. I was always afraid of doing that, as an artist. I'd see some R&B people on late night TV doing their 3 hits and that kind of thing. And I said, I never want to go there. I never just want to go and play the hits. I'd rather sneak them in a show, but get on with some big show of a different kind of music, like I did with 1,000 Hands. We had a great time with an ensemble that could create an orchestra here or a big band sound there. And the next year I'm thinking of going on tour with these young teenagers that I'm working with, the Academy of Rock, created by Paul Green, who created the School of Rock way back in year 2000, and I used to work and tour with these kids. And one of them, a guy called Zach, he was 15 when he was playing in the School of Rock tour in 2001, I think it was 2002, and he actually played in 1,000 Hands Band. So it's like I've got all these wonderful singers now working on the new piece of music that work in the Academy of Rock in Connecticut there. So I'm not going to sit down and smoke a pipe. I'm just going to get on with the next project.
See that, and that's so refreshing because listen, there are some that I know of that will say very publicly in interviews, I'm not doing another album. There's no point. It costs money. Nobody buys things anymore. Yada yada yada. And it's refreshing to hear somebody say, I don't care about that. I'm an artist. I create. I know we're going to run out of time, so I'm going to ask you this real quick. You have the relationship with Esoteric Records. They've put out a Song of Seven. They put out the Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman Howe Expanded Edition, Change We Must. Is this a relationship that is going to move forward with a whole bunch of other remasters and expanded editions, or you did these like 3, 4, 5 and we're done, or what can fans expect in terms of reissues and revisiting some of the classic albums?
Well, I've just, a friend of mine called Mick Byrne has a website on YouTube, and he's done maybe 60 of my songs, and yes, his songs visually. We've become friends, and he's more inspiring every week. This guy, he lives in Northern Ireland. He never stops creating, and he just did a remarkable piece from way back, Gates of Delirium with a full orchestra, and he's visualized it. And it's just, I'll send it to you. I'll find out your email and then send it to you today. It's remarkable. The idea that I
was going to say, my email is easy. I'll tell it for the whole world. It's Mitch@MitchLafon.com. There you go. Mitch@MitchLafon.com. Feel free, anybody, to write me. I'll answer.
How do you spell Lafon?
Lafon.
Laf. Oh, good. That's easy.
Yeah, Mitch.
Gmail, AOL.com.
No. Mitch at mitchlafon.com. So, yeah.
Oh,
See, nice and easy.
.com. I got it.
Yeah, and I look forward to getting that. But
Yeah,
it's nice for
interesting
fans.
that,
Go ahead.
well, I had this feeling last year that wouldn't it be great to release the epics of Yes, in one major sort of package, if you like, and they're all visualized as well in 3D without glasses. Now that's what I want to do, But we're slowly getting there. But the visualization of Mind Drive, you can actually see that on YouTube. It's very, very good by Mickey Byrne. And the other one is, of course, you want to do Close to the Edge. And as I said, Case of Delirium really looks good. And so I said, if we can get, 7 or 8 of the big Yes epics in a more progressive situation, shall we say, so it sounds like you'll hear Case of Delirium with the orchestra. It just sounds so wonderful. I was so surprised. I haven't listened to it since we actually did the tour in 2002. Steve's in the band, and Chris's bass is unbelievable. It's remarkable how brilliant he was. I always thought he was brilliant, but on this version of Gates of Delirium, he really is incredible. And Alan White's playing beautiful drums. We have a young guy, I can't remember his name now on keyboards, because Rick wasn't interested in the touring. So, but the version is still good. If anybody likes Awaken, if you Google Awaken Todd Mobile Iceland, that is the best sounding version of Awaken I've ever heard. I don't know what it is. We did it with a full choir and an orchestra in Iceland, in Reykjavik, 10 years ago. And it's like, if this music that Yes did, like Starship Trooper and Close to the Edge, of course, and You and I, Ritual, Revealing, all these large-scale pieces, if you can find really different, not different so much as best recordings, either live or not, and then you visualize them as well, and that would be a good presentation, especially at this point in time, what Yes was really all about. And that's why, in a way, we have so many Yes fans that stuck with the band through thick and thin as it went on its journey over the years,
It's been a great journey, and we've reached our time, so I'll finish with this. Next year, we're looking at 30 years of the Union album. Just send me off with a quick 30th anniversary nod to Union. I mean, an important album in the band's history. You sounded great on it, but then again, when do you ever not sound great? I mean, you sound great on everything.
Thanks.
Any kind of celebrations in plan, or are you just going to sort of say, hey, folks, 30 years, man, great stuff?
I'll call you. No, so is it Mitch with a T, M-I-C-H, or M-I-T-C-H?
M-I-T-C-H, and then it's at mitchlafon.com.
Good.
And
I'll
yes,
send you that.
do call me for the 30th anniversary. And we've spoken 3 times, I think, in the last year and a half. Always a pleasure. Always looking forward to it. And as we say in Montreal, merci beaucoup. Absolute pleasure. Always.
Merci beaucoup. I wish you well. Tout à l'heure.
Oui. Cheers. Merci. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.